Here's another example of a very precise piece of criteria that comes after your where clause. If you select all employees where the first name is Barry, you get one record. Now, there's more than one employee whose first name starts with the letter B. Erasing every letter after B gives us no records, because the equal sign is looking for an exact match. In other words, everybody whose name is B. However, if you change the equal sign to a less precise operator called like, and then say B, it still doesn't work until you put what is known as a wildcard. The percent sign can mean any number of letters and any type of letters. Let's execute. And notice, you get Barbara and Barry. If you understand that the percent sign is a flexible way to find any number of characters and any type of characters to look for patterns, but you're wondering what is meant by an equal sign is a precise operator and the like is an approximate operator, look at this query. We're going to start off with first name equals single quote B percent single quote and run it. And you'd expect to see Barry and Barbara, but you get nobody, because the equal sign is looking for a name exactly B%, and nobody has that name. By changing the equal sign to a like operator, we get the results we saw from just a few moments ago. The wildcard trick can be used with other letters too. Let's look at all of our employees first. We have 12 employees. Now we have some employees who have the first name starting with the letter E, and we could easily look through and see who they are, but let's let SQL Server tell us. Put where, first name, like, single quote, E, percent, single quote, and execute your query. And you see we get one result, Eric. Now we don't have to just look for patterns that start with a letter. We can choose to find everybody ending with a letter. For example, how many employees end with the letter Y? In this case, we'll put the wildcard first because we're looking for any letters that finally conclude with the letter Y. Execute the query, and you get Barry, Terry, and Sally. Other names that could appear if they were in your database could be Joy, Andy, or Lindsay. Let's take it a step further. Instead of starting with a specific letter or ending with a specific letter, let's look for patterns or letters anywhere in their name. For example, how many employees have a double R anywhere in their name? All you would do is single quote, percent, double R, percent, single quote, and execute the query. You get Barry and Terry. Now this next one is a borderline trick question. Let's say you were looking for people who have an A in their name. Single quote, percent, A, percent, single quote. Now here's the question. We have somebody named Alex who starts with the letter A. We have somebody named David who has an A in the middle of his name. And we have somebody named Lisa who ends with the letter A. Will David be the only one to appear because he's the only one with an A in the middle of his name? Or will Alex appear because there's an A in his name? Will Lisa appear because her name ends with the letter A? Well, what does the percent wildcard mean? It means 0 or any number and any type of characters. So make a prediction. Run your query. Notice we get Alex. Why do we get Alex? Because this percent sign represented 0 characters before it found an A. For Barry, well, it represented 1, and then it found an A. Lisa, it found an A and then no characters after it. The percent sign represents 0, 1, or as many characters as it needs to find the pattern. Now this might sound like a word riddle, but what if you wanted to find everybody who has the letter A somewhere after the first letter? In other words, no Alex, because he has an A as the first letter, but no letter after the first letter is an A. David, second letter is an A. Yeah, his name should show up. Lisa, the last letter is an A. Yes, we should see her too. So we want to force it to find any letter for the first letter and then an A anywhere after it. So what you're going to do is use the underscore. The underscore is similar to the percent wildcard. It looks for any letter, but it's exactly one character long. Now that we've ensured that there's at least one letter, we want to look for an A anywhere after the first letter. So we'll go underscore percent A percent and execute. Notice we don't see Alex, but we see Barry, who has an A as the second letter, Lisa, the fourth letter, Barbara, Sally, and so forth. You can use wildcards, and you can use many wildcards together. For example, we learned that A percent finds all of the last names, like Adams, that start with the letter A. If we wanted to find all the names that start from A to B, we can add to our criteria. Or last name like single quote B percent single quote and run it. You'll notice the result set. We have all last names where the first letter ranges from A to B. How about A through K? Well, we can continue this pattern, run this query, and you will notice you get a range of last names from A through K. There's an easier way to do the same thing, and I can do it with one criterion. Let's get rid of all this other stuff, and let's realize that what we want is a bunch of choices for the first letter, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. So let me put a square bracket around the A. Now, if I just list A and B in the square bracket, then those are the two choices I will allow for that position of that letter. So an A or a B will suffice. How about A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K? If I list all those, it gives me A through K in the result set. Now, what if I want a series of letters A through K? What if I just put A and K? Well, notice I've lost ground, because this just says A or K. Now, if A is the first of my choices and K is the last of my choices, and I want all the letters between them, I can put a hyphen here. Now we'll find all the letters from A to K. While you're learning SQL Server and one of your friends or coworkers who's known for being really good at SQL Server asks you, "So what have you learned so far?" See if they know this trick. Start off by doing something fairly simple, looking for all the last names that start with the letter O by going single quote, O, percent, single quote, and run the query. Now, why did they run this query? Perhaps they ran this query because they were looking for O'Malley, O'Shea, O'Shanahan. The intention of this query could have been looking for Irish names that start with the letter O and then have an apostrophe. Well, we did find two potential Irish names, O'Neill, O'Hare, but we also found Osaka, which is not exactly an Irish name. So there's a pattern we're after, O with an apostrophe. Well, an apostrophe and a single quote are the same thing. So if I put a single quote here, this is looking for an exact O. And this thing off to the right, this percent with a single quote, looks like an error. SQL Server says, hey, I got my two single quotes with an O on it. I don't know what this thing is off to the right. So what can we do? The first apostrophe needs to be the first delimiter of our string. The last apostrophe needs to be the ending delimiter of our string. But that middle one should not be a delimiter at all. It should be a regular apostrophe. The way to do this trick is to put a second apostrophe after the first apostrophe and disable its special meaning. And now we get the O apostrophe names appearing. Let's use an example from the grant table. Type in select star from square bracket grant, because grant is a keyword. Hit execute, and we notice quite a selection of different grants as a result set. We have percent signs, we have at signs, we have apostrophes, and we can use all the tricks we know to find all the patterns we want. Well, what if we were looking for email names? But now my email name is probably different than your email name. But they have something in common. All email names have an at sign in them. So a first attempt to look for email names might be this, where grant name like single quote percent at percent single quote, and run it. Are all the results email names? This is an email name. This is an email name. Now how can you tell that "at last you can help" is not an email name? Email names do have an @ sign, but they don't have any spaces. How can we find all the names with an @ sign that have no spaces? Add "and grant name not like single quote percent space percent single quote," and then run it. Now you notice we have no results that have spaces. We still have results that are not valid email addresses, but we're going to leave a little bit of challenge for you in the upcoming skill check to figure that one out. Okay, so this is of no surprise that this like with these wildcards finds an @ anywhere in the name, and you get a total of 5 records. Okay, so what about this query? It's not looking for an @ in the name, it's looking for the letter A. It looks like 9 of our 10 grants have an A somewhere in the name. Now, notice these first 2 grants. Not only do they have an A, but they have an underscore in their name. Per_cents, K_land. So what if my goal is to find all of the grants that have an underscore in the name? Well, just like all the other things, I surround what I'm looking for with wildcards. But wait a minute. Isn't an underscore also a wildcard that can mean anything? Look at this. I get all 10 records. You know why? The underscore doesn't mean underscore with the like operator. It means a wildcard of 1 letter. And this is at least 1 letter, and this is at least 1 letter. In other words, all my grants are at least 1 letter. So I didn't really narrow it down to finding just the underscore. If I want to find a literal underscore, but still use the like with these 2 wildcards, then I've got to put a beginning square bracket here and an ending square bracket here. And that gets my 3 grants that have an underscore somewhere in the name. Now this trick will come in handy in one other situation. Notice there's a % sign in this first grant's name. How many other grants have a % sign in the name? Well, let me run this query. I'm looking for a % in the middle of the percents. But doesn't this % mean anything? Anything with anything in it is everything. So use that same trick and put the beginning square bracket here, the ending square bracket here, and run it. And we get the 2 grants that have a % sign in the name. Okay, here's one more important trick with wildcards. Let's start off with something simple by looking at all of our employees. Okay, we get 12 records, and you probably remember that we have 3 employees who have an O as the first letter of their last name. Let's again find them. Where? Last name, like, and between the single quotes we'll do O%. There's our 3 employees. Now, we want to get rid of Osako. How are we going to do that? Well, one way is to say, I want the first letter to be an O, but I don't want the second letter to be an S. Here's what we can do. Put the caret inside of the square brackets, and that says the first letter should be an O, but in the square brackets, the second letter should not be an S. And we just get O'Hare and O'Neill. Now, we could have had a name like Olson, which isn't exactly an Irish name. So how am I going to get rid of all of the alphabetical characters for the second letter? Well, I'll just change the caret to looking to make sure that the second letter is not anywhere from A through Z. Lab 2.3, Skill Check 1. Write a query on the current products table of JProCo. Display a result set of all records that have the letter X somewhere in the product name, like Mexico. When you're done, your results should resemble the figure you see here. Skill Check 2. Write a query from the current products table of the JProCo database with the following specifications. Show only the product name, retail price, and category fields. Show the records where the first letter of the product name starts with the letters A to C. When you're done, your results should resemble the figure you see here. Skill Check 3. Write a query from the grant table of the JProCo database with the following specifications. Show all fields. Show the 3 records that have an underscore in their grant names. When you're done, your results should resemble the figure you see here. Skill Check 4. Write a query from the grant table of the JProCo database with the following specifications. Show all fields, and show the 2 grant records that have the character O as the second letter of the grant name field. When you're done, your results should resemble the figure you see here. Skill Check 5. Imagine you have been asked to create a result set from the JProCo database. You must create a record set showing all grants that were funded by someone with a valid .com email address. To succeed, you will need to use wildcards with the following information. Look for the @ symbol somewhere in the name. The email address name should end in a .com. Make sure at least one character exists before the @ symbol. Make sure at least one character exists between the @ and the .com. And ensure there are no spaces in the grant name. When you're done, your results should resemble the figure you see here. Skill Check 6. Show all employees whose last name does not start with the letter O, but has the letter A anywhere in the name. Show only the first name and last name fields. To succeed, you will need to use wildcards with the following information. Look for the first letter not to be an O. Look for the letter A anywhere in the name. And show only the first name and last name fields in your result set. When you're done, your results should resemble the figure you see here.